Hello, Jess here from All the Sparkle with a video tutorial for a three-dimensional card featuring stamps and dies from Mama Elephant. I recently discovered Bendi cards on Split Coast Stampers and I wanted to give one a try, so here's what I came up with. I'm not going to show every step in this video or we'd be here forever, but hopefully the process will be easy to follow. To start, I die cut the wave panels using Mama Elephant's Ocean Waves Trio from Nina Solar White 80-pound cardstock. One of the waves is approximately 2 inches high and the other is 1.5 inches high. The two wave panels will attach to the sides of the A2 background panel and will fold over it to create the dimensional card. The first step is to blend distress inks over all of the panels. I start with my darkest color, Chip Sapphire, and blend it along the bottom of the first wave panel. Next, I take my medium shade, Mermaid Lagoon, and blend it across the panel. Finally, I add a layer of Salty Ocean. There's not a huge difference in color between Mermaid Lagoon and Salty Ocean, but I like the subtle contrast. I flip over that wave panel and blend the same three colors together. Because the wave panels fold over the background panel, you will need to color both sides of the waves. Once the waves are complete, I set those aside to dry and work on the background A2 panel. I mask off half of the panel and blend the same three distress inks onto the bottom of the panel. I laid the tallest wave panel onto the card just as a reference for the horizon line. Next, I mask off the water and blend distress inks to create the sky. I use picked raspberry, abandoned coral, and dried marigold distress inks. I will be adding mountains and an iceberg to the background panel, which will break up the two halves of the panel. Next, I spritz the background panel and both sides of each wave panel with a water bottle to create texture in the water and sky. Off camera, I die cut the snow-capped mountains from Mama Elephant with gray and white cardstock, adhered the snow caps to the mountains with ATG adhesive, and then adhered the mountains onto the background panel. I take a scrap of vellum and rip the bottom edge to create an iceberg for my penguins. I use vellum tape to adhere the vellum and then cover it with a layer of Spectrum Noir clear sparkle. As you'll see later, I end up adding a second layer of vellum to create more dimension in my iceberg and hide the vellum adhesive. I've included a photo of my test run that hopefully helps explain the next step of the process. Off camera, I scored a vertical line 1/4 inch from one end of the back of each wave panel. The taller wave will connect to the left side of the background panel, so I scored on the right side of that wave and the left side of the shorter wave. Then I make a small mark 1/4 inch on the opposite side of each wave panel. I draw a vertical line down the panel using that 1/4 inch mark as a guide. Then, using my grid mat as a guideline, I sketch a notch in the middle of each wave panel and then cut those out. notches will slide into slits to create the curved shape of the card. I erase the pencil marks and then work on the slits. Unfortunately, I didn't record the first part of this next step, but hopefully the photo of my test run will make sense. First, I made a mark 2 inches from the right side of the background panel. This is where I will cut my slit. Then I laid the wave panel on the card and marked both edges of the notch. I use my ruler and draw a line to connect the edges of the notch so I can see where to cut. I use a craft knife to cut the slit and then erase my pencil marks. On the taller wave panel, I make another mark 2 inches from the left side of the wave panel. I follow the same process, lining up the shorter wave panel to mark the notches. Cut the slit with a craft knife and then erase the pencil marks. Next, I add adhesive to the scored flaps and adhere the wave panels to the background panel. I prep the background panel with my powder tool, then I stamp the sentiment from Whale Wishes with Versamark and heat emboss it with white embossing powder. I stamp part of the sentiment on the background panel and part of the sentiment on the front wave panel. Then it was time to add my critters. Off camera, I stamped the penguins from Arctic Penguins and the orcas from Whale Wishes. I cut them out using my scan and cut and colored the penguins' beaks and ice skates with Copic markers. I adhere the critters using my ATG gun and scatter them all over my card. I love that the whale set features mirrored images because it allows me to adhere them back to back so that they can poke out from the top of the waves and be seen from both sides. Finally, off camera, I adhere the background panel to a card base. And that's my card. It's such a fun way to present a scene, and there are lots of ways you could customize it and change things up. Next week I'm sharing a Bendi card that uses a shaker for one flap. The best thing about the Bendi card is that you can pull the notches out of the slits so that the card folds flat for mailing. You can find links to my blog and all of the products I used in the YouTube description below. If you liked my video, please give it a thumbs up and click the YouTube button to subscribe so you won't miss any of my future videos. Thanks so much for visiting and have a fabulous day.